to Books Are Good Medicine, a podcast sponsored by the Shakopee Mdewakanton and Sioux community, featuring books and other Native American-focused teaching resources. We're your hosts, Odia Wood-Krieger
and Allison Waka. Today we are joined by Suzanne Nash and Nathan Berglund from the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. The task force works to strengthen the wellness of Native communities in Minnesota through Indigenous values and ways of knowing.
Suzanne is a program manager who leads the Indigenous Peoples Task Force's efforts to return to the First Medicines, connecting people to Indigenous healing traditions that have been passed down through generations. She's Bois Forte Ojibwe. We talked about honoring tobacco as a sacred plant, the importance of smudging ceremonies, and much more. We hope you enjoy this episode. Well, good afternoon, folks. I'm so excited to have you, or we're so excited to have you on Books Are Good Medicine. One of the things that teachers often say to me is, oh my gosh, these books mention tobacco, and we can't talk about tobacco in school. And I thought, who would be a wonderful resource to introduce teachers to? And so that's Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And I'm hoping the two of you could introduce us to who you are, but also your work. And then we'll dive into some questions about the wonderful things you're doing in community.
Thank you. We're all excited to be here today. My name is Baju Nians and Disakaz Magazine Dodom. I said hello in my language. My spirit name is Nians, what means brown bird that survives the winter. And I'm from Bois Forte. And my Western name is Suzanne Nash. And I'm at Indigenous Peoples Task Force. I wear a couple different hats there. And so I work as a program manager, teaching youth about traditional tobacco and reclaiming it as our first medicine, but also teaching them about the dangers of commercial tobacco use, vaping, and drugs and alcohol. And then coordinate another project called IndigiBaby, which we are growing Indigenous foods. And we've created the first time ever Indigenous baby food with no preservatives in it, using our cultural foods as medicine.
Wow, you sound incredibly busy, and I can't wait to dive into some of that. And Nathan, please tell us about you.
Oh, yes. Hamadakiapi, Wakianwash Ake Machiapi, Nawashichuya Nathan Berglund Amachiapi. Hello, my relatives. My name is Nathan Berglund. I'm Oglala Lakota in Northern Cheyenne. I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised here in the Twin Cities. I'm happy to be in St. Paul because this is where I grew up. I grew up the east side, and I explored downtown a lot. And at Indigenous Peoples Task Force, I'm a Kittiwin youth worker. A Kittiwin is a youth program where we do theater to send out our messages to our communities about just problems that we've had. We've had plays where we talk about protecting water, about tobacco, about historical trauma, and other topics, that we feel like we need to share.
Thank you both. And I got to see in a Kittiwin production at one of the First Teachings conferences. It was such a good event. And so that was really what helped me get to learn more about the work that you do. And so it's kind of fun to be full circle to have you both here.
I probably looked a lot more baby-faced then, but...
Don't take this the wrong way. You still have a delightful baby face. So, yeah.
Yes, he has grown up. He started in the program with us when he was 12, and he now is an employee of Indigenous Peoples Task Force.
Oh, that's
We're very proud of that.
Yes. You all have a great program. I think, is it Brenna, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with her quite a few years with the library, and she is just amazing. Really enjoyed working with her and seeing her kind of progress over the years, how she takes it. It's just grown stronger, which is really nice to see.
Right.
Yeah. But that's really cool that you've been there since you were 12.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I love it. I'm like family, over at IPTF, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I've been doing acting, like I said, since I was 12, and I've got to go to many different states, even other countries. We've been to Ireland.
Oh, my goodness.
A play there called We Do It for the Water, and it was amazing. And we also did a water walk that Susie led. And it was an amazing experience. And, and now I'm grateful that I can work for the program and give these youth the same experience that I had when I was younger.
Yeah, Ireland was quite the experience. Sharon Day got invited. We all got invited to do this water walk. And at the last minute she got sick. And so I was kind of teeter-totting whether I was going to go. And then one of my colleagues, Peyton Counts, she was like, no, you got to go. So we told Sharon to stay back home, and we went, and it was an experience. The first time Peyton and I both led that water walk. It was interesting to be on that side of the world, but also it was also exhausting at some point when we went from community to community. They were asking us again, like, to, talk about the water and why it's important. And then we also talked about tobacco there because they use at such high rates over there. And it's 18 is the legal age there. And so we thought that was interesting, that there was everybody was still smoking everywhere, and there was like little vape shops everywhere. So it was,
and they were cheap. They were really cheap. Oh, and just to share a little bit about what a water walk is, it is a ceremony in which we collect water and then walk with it for however long the body of water is, or whatever length that we choose. So like, for example, like if they did the Lake Superior, they collect water and then walk around the entire circumference around the lake. All through the way, it's carried by women, and it is all through prayer. And so, as a man doing the water walk, my job is to make sure to protect the women, make sure everything's okay. And it's a very amazing ceremony.
And they carry the staff to make sure that the women are protected. So Sharon started those water walks back in 2011 when grandmother Josephine had a call out to the 4 directions. And so Sharon took that eastern direction. And so she's been doing those water walks since 2011.
There is the water walker. We'll make sure. And I didn't bring it. I didn't anticipate water walks as part of our conversation, but I
just happened.
It's a cute book.
It's
It really
such a
is.
great book.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. It's just another way that we use tobacco. So,
and then Carol Lindstrom has We're Water Protectors. Well, we'll put that one out as well. So folks,
That's a classic
that one.
too.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the returning to first medicine? Can you say a little bit about that?
So, Return to First Medicine was a curriculum that we created probably back in 2009, maybe even before that. We had a curriculum that we wanted to be culturally, had cultural teachings around it, around gardening practices, our traditional tobacco, when to grow, the seasonings. But it was really started out around the whole maternal health piece and the practices that you did to take care of yourself. So in the curriculum, we had to start off with those beginning teachings, right? Traditional tobacco, how it was colonized. And then we went into the food sovereignty, collecting the seeds, taking care of seed saving, but also what goes with that practice is traditional tobacco, offering your tobacco before you plant, and then the songs that go with that. And then the different moon phases for different planting seasons, why they're important, and the language, incorporating the language into some of that. And then we went into the maternal health. And for both, the idea was to do it for both female and male, because it's not just the female that has to take care of her body, the males do as well. And we always feel like males kind of sometimes can get the backside, and, they're just as sacred as women. And so we wanted to do it so that women understood and men understood that, like, it's what you do to your body before you decide to conceive. Well, what could affect the baby and the outcome? And then also talking about the generations before you, right? And so that curriculum was created, and it's called the Teaching Garden. And I can't say it in Ojibwe. I should have learned how to say it in Ojibwe by now, but I'm not fluent in the language. So the Western English name is the Teaching Garden. And so with that project, we started off with, we picked the kids ages 6 to 11 because we felt like there wasn't a lot of programs for the little ones.
Right.
We felt like there was a lot of programs for teenagers.
Mhm.
Then at that time, it was like teenage pregnancy, just wait, the DARE program, like some of those things were out, but there wasn't a whole lot of space for little kids. And so the idea of the book was, or the curriculum was to reduce diabetes. And how do we do that? And that's by growing our own food, taking care of the land, learning the language, singing the songs, and practicing that traditional tobacco ceremonies and the ways of doing some of those cultural teachings. So when we first worked with those young kids, my Aunt Doreen and I remember we had a moment, we were driving home from a conference and we were just really excited about the curriculum, and we did a presentation. I believe it was in Green Bay. But I was like, well, if we're going to reduce diabetes, I said, we should start from infants. And she's a doula. So, and this was, her line of work for sure. And she was like, yeah, that's right. We should. Like, how do we do that? So that we wrote notes down as we were talking. We took turns driving, took turns taking notes. And we got back to the cities and we went to Sharon, the executive director, and just said, like, this was a great presentation we did. And we had all these ideas and this is what we need. The big vision was we need a cultural center to be able to do cultural teachings where we can cook our own food. We don't have to use catering. And we need to grow our own baby food. And Sharon was like, I love that. I love that idea, and growing our own baby food. And at that time, we were working on this compost tea brew that we had made for the garden, and the kids were all trained in on it. And I was more excited about this compost tea brew, getting that out to the community, because it was another way to feed the soil and take care of the soil people without the chemicals in it.
Oh, okay.
And so without using, pesticides and all that, I was like, if all the reservations did this, and, if they just had their own food gardens and they grew, the basics for the casinos, we could change the way they do the food. And so we presented it to the board, and the board loved the idea of the Indigenous baby food. And they shot me down about the compost tea brew. And I was like, and they're like, well, we're in the middle of, getting ready to build a new building, and we don't want to take on too much debt. And they couldn't see the concept, right? They didn't see the vision that I saw. And so when that didn't quite work out, the Indigenous baby food thought did. And they're like, we could see this in every stores. I'm like, you got to deal with the FDA. I'm like, thinking all this. And I'm like, wow, it's a great idea. But I was like, thinking more long-term, like, and so we did it. We bought some wild rice from Bois Forte, and we started growing squash, and we did the Three Sisters, the beans and corn, and we, purchased organic blueberries, and we haven't tackled trying to grow blueberries. We did have a blueberry bush that we did get some off of, but so we started using the compost tea brew, building that garden, rechurning that soil, and we grow traditional tobacco. And then we just most recently, this last year, had our baby food packaged and is out there in the community. We have wild rice and blueberries, Gitian squash, Hopi black bean,
And sweet potatoes.
Oh, so where can you get it then?
You can get it at Indigenous Peoples Task Force.
Okay.
We're currently working on the business model, but we just been doing the
Like a local.
Organization, business to business model type of thing. And so we got a real Indigenous baby called the Indigenous baby food. And the baby is Melissa Lewis' son. I don't know if you're familiar with Melissa Lewis. She's a professor. She was at University of Duluth, and she's now in Oklahoma, and she has her own moms and women's program down there. And so she does buy some of our baby food from us. And so he's a real Indigenous baby who is now, I believe he's now like 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, that kind of started off some of the work, but the tobacco piece, the traditional tobacco piece, started with the curriculum that Sharon and during day wrote based upon their cultural teachings, based upon being in the lodge, growing up, how they practice their cultural teachings. And tobacco has been always first. It's always been our first medicine. It's always been everything we do first in prayer. And before we greet the day, before we start a feast, we ask an elder to do anything for us. And so that curriculum they wrote on used our cultural teachings for prevention around commercial tobacco and alcohol and drugs. So we start off with the commercial tobacco history. First, we start off with the traditional tobacco. What is your relationship with tobacco? And we ask them, how do you use it?
Mm-hmm.
And then we move into the colonization of it, how it was colonized and how it was taken away from us, and how we could not use it up until 1978. And so without creating any kind of judgment, it's really to change their relationship with it. And then going back to reclaiming it and practicing it and using it. So we made it that each group, we start off with that traditional tobacco ceremony and smudging. And then we go into the lesson plans. And the first 3 lesson plans are on our culture and traditional tobacco ties, how to make a medicine bag, and just giving them the basic knowledge of that, and then moving into those lessons.
So you mentioned 1978, and I know some of our listeners are Native, and they're like, oh yeah, 1978, I know exactly what she means. But for the folks who aren't aware of that, just Religious Freedom Act of 1978. So prior to that, any sort of religious act was outlawed.
Right.
And so that included using tobacco for prayer and
singing and playing the drums and all that. We were not allowed to do. Yeah. So, and I'm 55, so I was a part of that era where I grew up, where we blanketed the windows when we did ceremony, and where we kind of went in hiding to do that. But tobacco still was always a part of who we were, whether it was in that commercial tobacco form and the cigarettes. And I think that's when the addiction came in. It's probably why we have those high rates of, commercial tobacco use today, because, we assimilated, and that colonization piece of it, we still were trying to figure out a way to get the message to the creator. And still today, even in some tribes, you still will see a basket of cigarettes that go around, and partially due to because it was colonized for altar and profit, and we still use that as our first medicine, whether the chemicals are in there or not. And so we at the task force started growing traditional tobacco in 2002, I believe, or somewhere around there. Because one of the kids said, well, this is so bad for us. Why are we still using it? And so Sharon said, you're right. I have to think about that. And so she was gifted some seeds from a Mohawk family in New York. And so from there, then she started growing those little tobacco plants. And it's kind of taken off from there.
And it looks so different, right? When the commercial versus the natural, can you just say maybe a little bit about that, and then also what tobacco ties are?
Yeah. So the commercial tobacco has right now, I think it's over 7,000 chemicals in it. It seems like they're adding more chemicals all the time.
Well, they have to keep you addicted.
Yeah. So they use formaldehyde, sugar, bleach, and then there's the filters on them. So and they use all these preservatives to preserve that commercial tobacco, also for it to stay lit too, right? So when you're smoking it. And so the traditional tobacco is just that natural tobacco plant. It's green.
Mm-hmm.
It's some are brown, depending on which tribe you're with. But it's a natural plant that comes, that grows, and it was gifted to us. And so there is a difference. I did bring a bottle of the traditional tobacco with me today that I carry with, that I could show you if you would like.
Please.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So you're going to show us the difference.
So what I have here is traditional tobacco that came out of our garden. And as you can see, it's kind of green.
Right.
Was this some of the stuff that I helped grow?
Yes.
So I did work on the Indigenous Baby Farm for like 3 years. And so I got to got to spend a lot of time with the plants there, and especially the squash. They were like my little babies, watching them grow up. So, and I did taste test all the baby food.
Where's the garden?
So the garden is in Center City. Sharon has a property land there that she leased some land to us for us to be able to grow the baby food and grow the tobacco. So to your point about like it not being accessible, so this is what you have, this is what we do. And even elders today, even if they're gifted a bag of, the big bags of tobacco, right? They still have to use that because they were gifted with that. But we recently, I wrote a grant a couple of years ago. Brenda and I actually did it. And my vision was to have tobacco farms like we have commercial tobacco farms. And so that we have access to traditional tobacco. And then growing it. Blue Cross, awarded us the grant. They were excited about the idea. And so this last year, we started growing tobacco with other partners. So we grow it, but we wanted to make sure that other people have it because sometimes people call us and ask us for it and we gift it to them. So we came up with some packaging, and I last year had 4 partner organizations that working with me. Division of Indian Work, Neck Clinic, Lower Sioux, and Andayan. So all those partner organizations were gifted seeds, and we did some, a tobacco ceremony with them, and we did the TAs, they might want to call it, around growing traditional tobacco, and we did a feast, and they could either keep them at their organizations and grow them there, or we could take them back to the farm.
Okay.
And so some of them did end up coming back to the farm. But the idea was to make that normal, growing traditional tobacco, and so that it's readily available, so that we don't have to use commercial tobacco. Plus, the push is really because there are some city ordinances that are happening that Minneapolis might be taking one on, but also City of St. Paul has an ordinance. It's called nicotine-free ordinance. And I think it's, if you're born after 2007, you cannot purchase commercial tobacco. And I'm like, wait, we still use, commercial tobacco because we need access to it because we don't have it readily available. So it's really, the idea is to get people to grow traditional tobacco today.
And one of the things you said, I'm not sure, maybe our listeners picked up on, but you were talking about gifting tobacco. And do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of gifting medicines to people and sort of the protocols around that?
Yeah, so it's always been the protocol that if you want somebody to do something for you, or you want a spirit name, you want to ask what your spiritual name is, even though we know we already have that gift when we come into this world, but we may not know it, to seek it out is to have a spiritual person do that. So we'll offer them tobacco, or if we need healing ceremonies, we're asking an elder to do storytelling for you, or anything that relates to some cultural teachings. You'll offer them tobacco. But then the other one for Lakota and Dakota community is Kinshasa, and I was like, Nate, if you don't mind, he can talk more about that.
Yeah, it's another form of traditional tobacco that is harvested from the red willow tree, or I know there's another, like red osier dogwood is another name for it. But basically you scrape off the outer bark of that, and then you want the white inner bark. And I actually brought some from my personal stash. This is stuff my mom harvested, and I mean, we can get a closer look at it later, but yeah, I'll put it on the table for now. I did mix it with a little bit of traditional tobacco as well, so it's kind of dark, and it also comes in all shapes and sizes and colors and all that. And this is just another kind of medicine that we use. And at its core, tobacco is a medicine that we use for offering. That's what we, like Susie said, that's why we use to give it to elders if we need and to ask for anything, because we in our culture, we don't want to take anything without also respecting the spirit of the thing we're taking from.
It's harvesting time soon, right? Because you have to, before the first thunder, right?
Oh yeah. Before the first thunder, that's when the time to get your red willow.
And I'll say, usually it's easier to find, right? Because, you know, you have that nice white blanket and then the red Osier dogwood's like, here I am, because it's that gorgeous red. And you have to work a little harder this year to find it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's beautiful too when you see it. Like you'll just see that. Well, we don't have that much snow right now, but yes, with the snow, it just stands out perfectly red and beautiful. And it was funny when you guys were talking about how it's not like the nicotine laws or whatever. Like I remember going to school and always having my tobacco pouch and having, you know, the commercial tobacco stuff.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, seeing signs where it's like no tobacco on premises. And I'm like, I need this, you know, like I want to carry my medicines with me to school.
That was my one question for you all, and how to really work with that, because I do know my niece actually got in trouble because she had her tobacco with her. I mean, she's not at that time. I think she was like 7. You know, she was. So how do you know of anything that's working with at that point? MDE even got involved, the Department of Education, because it is a rule not to, and I understand the rule, right, and why we have it, but how is that when you're not using it in a protective way, but not in a smoking way? Like how do we support? How would you say educators could support their students in that?
So I'll tell you, so they just recently legislatively passed, some legislation that says you are allowed to carry your traditional tobacco medicine bag on you. Some of our youth were part of doing that presentation to legislators where they testified. And normally, it has to go through the House and Senate. Our kids got done testifying, and Senator Kunish asked us if we would participate in that. And we said, yeah. And when we got done, they said, we don't see no reason why this shouldn't be. It would just go straight through. So it is, you can now carry it. You can also do ceremonies in school. And the next session we did was smudging. Practicing smudging in schools is now a policy that was created, and schools are now allowing that space for youth to be able to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for that work. On behalf of my family, it was really a traumatic experience for us.
Yeah, my son went through that in high school when we had a program where he made his own first tobacco pouch. And I remember the school calling me and telling me that they wanted to take it away. And he's sitting in the principal's office because he refused to give it up. And he told me, he says, you cannot touch my medicine bag. This is not for anybody to touch. This is mine. I have a right to carry it. And it was him and one of his friends who each got one, and who made it with Joey, who came to one of our programs. And I had to go explain it to her. And she's like, well, our school policies. And I'm like, but it's not, they're not using it for commercial tobacco use.
They're not smoking in the bathroom. They're not like hiding out behind the school.
Yeah. So we had to push that. But it did work out. They did understand.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that I was lucky enough to go to, native school. Like I agree. I went to American Indian Magnet School, kindergarten, pre-K to 8th grade. And so like I always had native teachers, that would look out for me. And I was really grateful when they did pass the one thing in St. Paul Public Schools that we could smudge in the building. And it was so interesting. My like non-native counselor would come up to me every day like, hey, like, do you want to smudge? We have the stuff. And I'm like, maybe not today. No, I'm just kidding. But I would it was nice to see him like asking me like, hey, like, do you want to smudge? We have the stuff. We have the space. And that was at Gordon Parks, which wasn't like a native school. And so like, that was when I was in high school, and it was just amazing to see that.
There just should be, I think, for prayer space, regardless of what you believe in, right? There should just be a respect given, and but this is really good news, and for educators too, to know that is in practice now, and so that they can bring that back to their schools.
Yeah, Senator Kunish was, I believe she was a school teacher. So
she was a school librarian.
School librarian.
Yeah,
okay.
Media. Yeah,
I knew she had that connection. Yeah, and so she really wanted to make that happen.
Yeah,
and it was really important to her. And so our kids had done some testifying around flavors and vapes, and so they got their advocacy skills down, and so it's a good thing.
A lot of educators talk about how culture saves lives, right? And providing young people, hopefully start them off young with these teachings, and so that they feel like they have a place and that they're seen and valued, so that we have adults who feel connected and seen and valued, because I think that's what everybody wants. And so I'm excited that St. Paul's done that. And I saw that, pockets of schools and districts around the state are doing it. I did want to talk about some of the books. You brought some books. I brought some books. And just in case, because I know that educators will see tobacco and think, oh gosh, I can't use this book because it's tobacco. So I did want to talk about a few of them, and you can talk about yours first if you'd like.
Yeah. Okay. So, I brought some books that are not necessarily, they could tie into tobacco, how we use our medicines for grief. And then the other one is about bullying. And then the other one is another one about the adventures of little wanderers. So I met a gentleman, Lehman Riley, who's been writing books since he was 18. But he has one here that really touched my heart. It's about grieving and the loss of his daughter to opioids and an overdose. And how, he's still fighting to get the investigation going. But the book is what pretty much saved him, was to be able to tell his story, and how he was dealing with grief. And he had heard about me, who I lost my son 3 years ago, and he wanted to know how I was doing with the grief. And we started a event at the Capitol 3 years ago called Remember Our Loved Ones event. And so after my son passed, I really wanted to tell the story, but I also wanted to make sure that no other parent would go through what I went through. The loss of a child is something you should never really have to go through. And especially with these cases of overdoses were rising in American Indian community, where we have the highest rates. So I felt the need to do something, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be. First, I wanted to write legislation to make sure that the money that was coming in would be going to the communities that were most impacted. That was a hard. I'm in my third year and trying to introduce it, and this year is going to be a tough year, as you know. So obviously, it didn't make it, but I'm still trying. So at the event, I wanted legislators to know that these are real people. I want them to see their faces. So we made poster big signs with their photos and 3 things that their child loved doing. That's something that was about them. And so they could email them into me, and we had a small grant that paid for us to create those poster signs, because we knew that would be an issue, right? People might not have the money to do that. So we invited community, we put it out there, we created a page. It's called Remember Our Loved Ones. It's still up. And we took those posters to the Capitol, and we had legislators come out. We had Dave Baker, one of the representatives who lost his son years ago. I think it's probably like 12 or 13 years now. And so he spoke about that, and he spoke about why it's important. And then we had other parents come up and talk that lost their loved ones, and we did a ceremony. We had elders that did the ceremony to honor those that have passed on. And it kind of created this domino effect where a gal that was there who lost her son from Red Wing, she works with the American Indian community down there, and they wanted to do it. So we took it down to Winona, and we did it down there. And this last year, we took the kids, and Nathan brought the kids, and they did a theater piece on Our Songs Have Power. And that piece is about, I'm going to let Nathan talk a little bit about that, because I don't really know. But I really wanted to share this with you, because I know we're talking about books are medicine. And after watching some of your podcasts this morning to figure out like who you guys were, and I did my own research, and it really got me thinking about love that tagline that books are medicine, because they really are. The first time I heard it, I wasn't sure, but after listening, it really made sense. And I just love the idea that, books can be healing, they can be educational, they can be inspiring. So I just thought I'd share this with you guys and today. So, but I want to let him just kind of a little bit talk about that play, because that play is really important for people to deal with addiction and how we got here with that.
So yeah, the play is called Our Songs Have Power. And it's a old story, but the play was written by Sharon Day, and it's about it's a little bit different because there's a woman who goes to this water walk, and she is like only like 2 days sober. She's heavy on alcohol, and so she goes to this water walk, and then this elder, she comes up to her and notices that she's distressed, and so she says, "Let me tell you a story." And this story is about a man who was an amazing hunter, and he could catch every deer he wanted. He caught all the little rabbits, and he one day goes to trade with the French fur traders, and then the French fur traders introduce him to whiskey, and of course the trader's like, nah, But eventually, the hunter succumbs to the pushing of the whiskey, and then gets becomes an alcoholic, and he doesn't have any furs to trade with. He can't support his family anymore. And then he gets visited by this spirit, this Wolverine spirit, not the X-Men, but the Wolverine animal. And the Wolverine just tells him, I've been watching over you. I was the one who led those animals to your traps. I'm the one who provided for you. And now you're not there for your family. You're not there for your community. Why should I still help you? So pick yourself up and help yourself, And it's this story that's so powerful that, it's so like sad to see like people crying in the audience, because it does relates to them, and I've had some experiences in my past where, I start getting emotional thinking about, my relationship with alcohol and stuff like that. And then eventually the woman who goes to the elder after the end of the story, she talks about how she's been on 3 marathons, and, she found an eagle feather that she keeps close to her heart, and it's an amazing, beautiful, like 20-minute piece. If you ever get the chance, maybe come find us at Kidwin Youth Theater Ensemble.
Yeah. So you would be online then?
IndigenousPeoplesTF.org. There are emails to contact us if you want the youth program to come perform at schools or community centers. We've done conferences, all over the place.
Uh-huh. It's such a beautiful story. It has such emotion in it. And it's the emotion when that spirit comes and, tells him, get up, get up. This is not what you are. You are more than this. And he tells him, get up. And you can just feel the emotion in that. And the gentleman gets up, and so it's like, that's, alcoholism is not just who you are. It's not what you are. Right. And so really getting people to think about that and to be able to tell that story and to feel it, the best ways I think education is in community is to be able to tell the story and for people to feel it. That's the best way we can,
get the message.
Move. And it's also another way to move past grief, because grief can be very heavy at times. It can be like a whirlwind of emotions. You can feel like you're drowning, and the next minute you're laughing about a joke they said, or their smile comes to your face, or you think about, just how they made your day.
Uh-huh.
And so it's, I really like the way he was able to write a book about it. I thought it was just kind of inspiring. And then our stories that we have.
And our songs that go into it, because there's a song that explains the whole story as well, that goes with it, that every time you sing that song, you have to tell the story of that man.
So I brought a few other ones that I'll just go through real quick. The Offering of Tobacco, the Blackfeet author, and it's a whole series, but Sacred Eagle Feather, Strength of His Hair. So I love these because they're like a little primer that, if people want to learn more about it. Through Understand Native Minnesota, we did a massive book giveaway of this amazing book. And of course, an adaptation from Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, and Monique Gray Smith. She did it. Folks know I'm a Monique super fan. She talks about the 4 sacred medicines a little bit and has questions. And I have a graphic novel called 3 Feathers. And it is three boys who commit crimes, and they have to go live on the land, and they live with elders. And so they get to learn all these teachings. They weren't like Nathan at 12 getting them the right way. They're getting them the right way. Their path to them was a little more chaotic. And so they get to learn the teachings. And then I've got two picture books, The Gift of Monoman. And so in this one, Putting Down Before Harvesting. And then I really loved Josie Dance's, because if you look, so this is Angie Erdrich, who did the images. So Louise and Hyde's sister. But in there, Josie actually gives a tobacco tie.
Oh.
And so love this one. The pictures are amazing. So wanted to have some examples of sort of normalizing the use of it, and great books to have in libraries.
Could you tell us, like, is there for a reason with the tobacco ties, just like a quick overview of why it's red, or
And my bag of goodies here.
yeah, this very cool bag.
So this bag was made by my aunt Charlene Day, and I gifted these out to different partners for our organization. Was their bundle bags to keep their tobacco, their sage, their sweet grass, and an altar put down to do that ceremony, so that they had everything they needed to get started and to do that.
Oh,
Yeah. So, but in here, Nathan can do a demonstration quickly on the tobacco ties, and he can talk a little about the colors. So traditionally, every tribe, has the four directions, right, and their colors in those directions. And for Ojibwe people, everything starts in the east. Tobacco grows in the east, and then red is the south, and then the black is the west, and the white sits that northern direction where that polar bear sits. But for Lakota people,
it's a little different. So yeah, the yellow is the east, the red is the north, the black is the west, and the white is the south. And there's a meaning between, like with every native thing, there's a meaning behind it. It's like, these are also the four colors of the medicine wheel. And there are so many different things that go into that. Like each color has a medicine that goes with it, with our four sacred medicines, or like the cycle of life. It's like babies, adolescents, and there's so many different meanings behind it. And, some things, these are just the way like the spirits tell us to make it, especially if they're just like, oh yeah, make like 15 red, 15 yellow, 15 black. Then it's just like, those are just like the ceremonial protocol that we have to follow when we do our ceremonies.
sorry.
I can hold them up again. Yeah, they're just little squares. And then, of course, we fill them with traditional tobacco or commercial tobacco, because sometimes that's all that's available to us. That's what I grew up using, making tobacco ties. And what you do is that you just put a little bit of tobacco in the middle, but then we just bundle it up, and then we tie it off with the sinew, and then you can just make a string. And for some ceremonies, I've had to make hundreds of these. And when you put your tobacco in there, you put your prayers in there as well. And so usually what I was taught is that when you make these tobacco ties, you do it in silence, just so that you're just there with your thoughts and your prayers. And then, at the end, we either put them out by a tree, or we make a sacred fire and we burn them. So then, eventually all of our prayers will go up, to the Creator.
So this is a good reminder for people who maybe see these out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Please leave them alone. They're
yeah.
not, you don't need to take photos or touch them or do anything. They're there, and they'll go back to the earth when they've done their job.
Like in Bear Butte, they have a lot at the top, a lot of tobacco ties, or even where we do our ceremonies outdoors, we have tobacco ties tied all over the trees, and that's, please do not touch them. Because those are the people's prayers.
Yeah, I always had this vision about doing this. Bringing in, how in DC they bring in that big tree at Christmas time.
Oh,
and they light it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need to have an event on Franklin Avenue where we have the big tree that's brought in, and we have everybody put their prayers in that tobacco tie, during the Christmas holidays for
that
people.
would be beautiful.
And, like having, these everybody come and you feast and you do that. And yeah, I don't know. For a long time, I've had that vision. I'm like, how do we make that happen?
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get it.
I thought you were going to say, let's just make one big tobacco tie.
That too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, hey, maybe that's an art project. One that's sitting in the middle of, Franklin Avenue.
Right. Maybe at the new NAC center, they can do a
take the wolf
sculpture.
out, put the tobacco there. Yeah.
Well, this is so lovely having you both. I want to thank you. And you're just such beautiful, strong people, and really lucky to have you here in our community.
We have gifts for you because we know in our community and our ways that we have we give gifts. And this is tobacco for you too. This is our packaging that we use for our program. And so each one of you have been gifted tobacco.
Thank you.
In your work. And thank you for honoring us and being able to be here today. This was fun. So
well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Books Are Good Medicine. Subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also visit our website, booksaregoodmedicine.com, to find episodes and resources or to send us a comment. This podcast is sponsored by the Shakopee, Metawakan Sioux community and produced by Goff Public. Our theme music is Stomp Dance by Blue Dog. The opinions expressed on the Books Are Good Medicine podcast by its co-hosts and guests are their own in their personal capacities and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization with whom they are affiliated or of the podcast sponsor.